All right. Hello, everybody. It's nice to see you guys again. So, in today's video, I'd like to talk about the subject of vibe coding, which is a term coined by, I think, by Karpati, I think, uh, to basically saying that you can now depends on AI to entirely produce your codes. And just want to show that, or to prove that vibe coding is legit. But of course, there are many people out there who's saying that it's not. I don't really understand why, because technically, if you are a real software developer, you can actually tell whether the code produced by AI is good or not. So, for anybody to just label saying, AI generated code crappy, to me, that's a bad generalization. But anyway, so because of that, I don't really agree with Prime Agent or somebody like him. Especially when he wants that every time you produce code, it has to be really good, like godlike almost. So it's not really practical for a day-to-day um, production of codes. Right. So I also want to show you the what's the real way to use AI in app development. It's not going to be a standard or of some sort. It's just my way of using it for, and I've been using it or applying this technique for at least 6 to 8 months. And as a software developer myself, I would say the code generated using this technique, at least at my level, is considered acceptable. It's not going to be a godlike. It's not going to be the kind of code that will reduce like 100x performance to the level that you only need 2% of the CPU usage and things like that. But it's a code that if any human developer produce to be reviewed by a senior level developer, this kind of codes are acceptable. And we'll do a code review at the end of the session, uh, with the criteria that we are going to look into. Right. And as usual, there will be a remark to this. If you want the code to be 100% almost, like always be 100% like godlike, you really have to be very proficient and efficient and all that, then go and work for Prime Agent, somebody like him, right? Okay, so with that, let's look at what's the definition of the correct way of vibe coding according to my experience so far. Okay, so you will need first you will need a system prompt, or what many developer knows as dot cursor rules, because this is the term coined by cursor IDE, right? Okay, so I'll show you what's my cursor rule for this project, because I have a standard one, but that is for the my day-to-day real work. So I can't really show that, but I have a different one that I can use for projects and hobbies and stuff. And number two is you need to know exactly what you are building. So if you want to properly vibe code on real code, real projects, just know how to build the prompt for it, or what do you have to know to prompt to get AI to produce your code. Not just saying, not just looking at all these videos and saying, oh, build me a snake game. It's not, definitely not like that. If you do that, of course, the code that you will get will be crappy lah, right? And then third one, you need to use AI first to create plan. If you don't plan before you vibe code, again, also you're gonna have a crappy uh, code produced for you at the end. So plan first, definitely, every time, all the time. Okay, so only with the plans created, then you can ask the AI to code for you, right? And then if you follow these steps, at least this is the least steps to take for me to get a good code. I mean the kind of code that's acceptable. Because if you skip any one of this, first of all, I can't guarantee that your code will be acceptable. but I would say with high confidence that the code that you're gonna get will not be a good code, or at least acceptable by the professional standard, lah, right? Okay, so let's look at the cursor rule that I have for you. So I already created the project for this one. Okay, so the cursor rule I'm going to use for this project is this. Right, so let's look at this cursor rule. First of all, we need a persona. So the first line here, just for me to sure or be sure that AI actually use this cursor rule, or at least exposed to this cursor rule. So whenever you answer with a do in the front, that I know that it's always having this cursor rule in memory. And then you describe the persona. So of course, you want this person or this persona to assist you, having a background of experience in developer, with using all these best practices in the way that that it's going to be coding, and following the kind of security best practice that that your bosses will be asking for you to follow or to adhere to. And of course, the having the kind of critical thinking, or the way of thinking that you need for anybody to have while creating the solution for the task at hand. Right. So again, this is basically the kind of thinking methodology that I just asked AI to produce for me. I have no idea what this means and all these methods, but I've been using this for a while and it works for me. So you can change this to anything that are more understandable to you. But to me, I've been using this and it works. So I'm just going to continue using it until it doesn't work anymore. And then, okay, so pseudocoding, and how the AI to validate the thinking process. Again, all these four things are just, a strategy of how for you to do critical thinking that I asked AI to produce for me, and it gave me this, so I just accepted. Right. You also need to state your stack. It can be definitive. It can be just a bunch of options that AI can choose to use. And then all the best practice that that if you are the one who code or produce this code, or what do you need to follow. So to me, before you code, you need to pseudocode first with the plan. And then if you are handling errors, how you do it. If you're handling database session, how do you do it? Do you do logging? If you don't do logging, how do you do your audit trails and things like that? Again, these two again is just another additional, upon asking the critical thinking process. I also give me the mandates of implementation of thinking. So again, I don't really understand, but I just want to follow. I've been using it for a while still. It works for me. Then I add to this because this project is that I'm going to do for this particular video is related to a Python backend that I'm going to produce. So I am also inserting the specifics of how I want the AI to follow. So the overall workflow will be from user input going to the API endpoint, need to be validated and to be passed into a DTO before you pass it to a service layer for uh, logic operation via dependency injection. And then service layer have to use some sort of a CRUD file or a repo file that have the CRUD methods inside it, doing the SQL um, operation directly to SQLite 3. SQLite 3 is the one I'm going to use today. Right, so on API best practice, it's a bunch of things that I needed to follow. For the SQL raw repo best practice using SQLite, these are the things that I want the AI to follow. And on the service class creation, I want AI to follow this kind of. I'm kind of I'm fasting today, so I can't really talk too much. But you guys can have a look, pause the video to have a closer look to this on this text. Right. So additional guideline will just be some other things that I think AI should have or bear in mind. Right. So this is the cursor rule that I'm going to use. Okay. So let's look at what is the project or the demo I'm going to show today. So I've created earlier the front end version of the app that I am creating now. So I have created again using vibe coding. the kind of front end that I want to boilerplate. Basically, it's a registration and a login, generic one. So if we have this, then whenever we have a new project, then we can always have this boilerplate code that we can reuse or alter. Again, all these code are generated by AI. So if you are a proper developer, you can tell that there's nothing wrong with all this code that have been generated. Using the tailwind, using the proper divs, using proper structure. I'm using view. So in terms of declaring imports and variable and the refs and even the function, the using the I forgot already what's the name of this quick function. It's not quick function, something else I forgot. Right. So and the kind of validation that it creates, the logic of the validation, and then how to handle the logic using an import from a different files, and all these files and structure is also created by the AI. So like I said, if I were to do this myself, this is also the way I'm gonna do it. And this is the store functions for the Pinia, the state management for view that I'm using here. Okay, so this is basically the front end, and it looks like this, right? So basically, you can log in uh, using a mock file. So like I said, these are all generated by AI. And there's nothing wrong with it. And even the user that logged in, is actually properly stored in the local storage, right? There's no more error anymore. I mean, there is some error, but I asked it to fix it. So this is the backend. Now on this project, what we are doing is actually creating the backend of this, backend for that. So the goal of this vibe coding session is to create a user registration and user login backend API endpoints using Python, using Fast API, using JWT, SQLite with raw SQL repository. Right, so I have some features, a product backlog here, saying that user can register an account using username, email, and password. So I'm going to skip the email verification emails, that normally we send to verify that this user has that email and that email actually belongs to that user. And we're going to skip that. And then I'm just going to state username and email must be unique. So this is just an additional info that I want the AI to know. And the second feature, the backlog is user can log in to his account, and hopefully it noticed that using the JWT, security. Right. So the vibe coding step that we're going to follow is as usual. We're going to create a base requirement and the project setup plan. This using this information. At this point, I'm going to ask the AI to not generate any code yet. And then from that, we're going to create detailed one-point story. This is actually one of the trick I use, or I steal from, I forgot his name, but I'll probably update this to you guys later, in some other video. But one point stories plan is really is a good keyword to use. But as usual, I'm going to use in pseudocode. That's basically what I use before this anyway. At this point, do not generate any code as well. And then after that, only we're going to ask to fully implement the detailed plan, one domain module at a time, and one user flow at a time. So we're going to ask to do registration first, or login second, and things like that. Because we know that that's the kind of detailed plan that's going to produce for you. Right, and finally, after all are created or all generated and working, we're going to test it. Then we're going to review the codes using this criteria that it has to be readable, has to be maintainable, has to be correct. That means you have to work as intended. Has to have all the documentation that should be there. That when a function are created or when a more big logic is implemented, and has to be efficient. That means you can tell if there is a visible memory hog, memory leak, bottlenecks, and unclosed session. You're just going to skim if there's anything like that happening, and we're going to look at how the error are handled. Has to be gracefully and also with logging. Or we can you can also ask to log here and there while we are debuilding this. So either way, There are two more here, but this is basically, I'm going to skip this because it's going to make the video too long. Right. So with that, let's code. I already created again, let's just close this first. I already created the project folder for this. So I already created the virtual environment just to skip the time. Let's just launch Ada. Ada is basically my go-to AI code assistant. So if you notice, I have a specific Ada launch code because I want Ada to run in a specific way. Basically, the idea is Ada must respond to me with with an architect and an editor mode together in one session, in one response session. That means whatever I say, there will be an architect to think about it first, and then after think about it, produce some sort of plan and give the plan to the editor model to actually execute the code for me at all times. Yeah. Right. So the rest is like no auto commit is basically because either by default is going to auto commit to Git. So I like to do manual. So I also use the argument of no auto commit and no detect URL because either whenever you prompt or whenever there's a issue somewhere with an URL detected in the full string, they will automatically ask whether uh, whether we want it to go and go and look at the file or look at that URL or website. So I don't want it to do that as well because that when that happens, it takes more time for you to actually do your work. I don't want to be interrupted with all these things. So again, I added the no detect URL parameter as well. Right. So with that, let's do. I already created the folder discussions here. So this is where we put all the plans. So let's go back to this plan and copy. mm, Let's just do copy the whole thing. All right. So uh, okay. So actually, I have also a file here. The first three prompts always. So this is basically the prompt template that I use to to start my project. So I always used to say to AI, say I'm thinking to create blah blah blah. So I'm just going to do some sort of editing here. I'm thinking to create a user registration and login backend API endpoint with Python blah 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 blah. Okay, and the feature product backlog is one this and second this. So continue with can we plan for that first create a basic going spec to plan completing this app in a very high level. So save this and blah blah. Okay, so this is my first prompt. And then let's go back to Ada. Um, right, so then prompt it. Oh, I'm using O3 Mini High for the architect model and Sonnet 3.7 non-thinking for the coding model. Right, so it has produced it has think about what to produce for the high level plan, and now it's basically creating it. So user auth high level plan, right? Okay, so let's look at the plan quickly and see if it's actually aligned with what we're thinking. So objective is building backend endpoint support, blah blah. Okay, situation accept email, no email. Okay, so login certificate. Okay, so first utilize Python. Okay, so endpoint, non-functional security. Okay, and the API layer, service layer, repo layer. Okay, and then we have user table, data model, ID, username, hash password. Okay, and then next step, blah blah blah. Good, good. I like this. So let's do a detailed plan on this. So going back to my template. So please create a detailed 1 point stories planning in pseudocode. Let's create that from this base plan and store the data plan discussion folder. Okay. Uh, right. So start with what we need to set up install. I like to do this because sometimes we actually need, sometimes we don't. But if it produce this, we can always delete it from the the plan itself. Okay, now it's generating the detail plan, right? You guys can also take a look at the cost of doing this, just for you guys to see if it's worth it or not to vibe code at work. Uh, okay. Right now we have the detailed plan. Let's take a look at it. Okay, so 1 point study breakdown, blah blah blah. Pair environment variable. So we already have this, so this one you can skip. Create which environment we have done this. Activate also done this. Install. Okay, study dependency. Okay. You want pj0t password. Okay, we did that. Requirements txt. Okay, and then create the following project folder. Blah blah blah. Achievements project. Hmm, I'm thinking to ask not. Okay, you know what? I'm web coding, so I'm not really supposed to interfere too much with this thing. Look at the three. Okay, okay. I think this is all looking okay. Okay, I think it's doing both at the same time, the registration and the login. Okay, either way, you know what? Let's just go with it. Okay, let's look at the third step. Is implement. Okay, so to what steps we want it to do, and then we're gonna ask, okay, fully implement. Go, go. Okay, the code are being generated. Mm, yes. I don't see the SQLite setup, so kind of worry. And I actually saw some sort of hard coding there in terms of the user. So let's see. This was some SQL query though. Okay, manpy is produced, services is produced, repos produced, test off. Okay, right. So where's my SQLite database? I don't see it. Maybe not in the detailed plan, so that's why. Create a repo with the raw SQL, implement function to interact with the SQL database. Hmm. Design the database schema. Create a SQLite DB file. So db.sqlite. Where's db.sqlite? I don't see it. Uh, please check if you have done story to properly. I don't see the database. Is it there? Let me just init function. Oh, when you init, then only the DB is being, created. So blah blah blah. No. Okay, okay, okay. I got it. Sorry, sorry about that, guys. So that I think. Okay, let's just do a quick review. Uh, okay, so it actually hard coded all the this thing here instead of in the env file. So okay, where's my requirement.txt? Uh, I can also see pedantic is also here. Pedantic details. You know what? Let's just do this, and I'm just gonna ask where's the requirement.txt? Because I thought in the plans it should be there, right? Okay, it's creating it. Create your profile, yes. Uh, and then I do ask. If you don't know, you just ask it. So how do I run requirements of this file? So no, just answer. Don't need you to look at the content. Right, so this is how you do it. Pip install requirement.txt, copy that. Open a new command from so activate. Okay, and then click install requirement.txt. Okay, if you notice the libraries are installed, so main main.py is looking good. I mean, for what do you call it, hobby project, this is okay. But actually, if you look at this file, all this like API endpoint supposed to be inside uh, API folder or an endpoint folder, something like that. Should not be here in the main.py. Okay, that one is still successfully installed. All right, so I'm seeing something here with the problem saying on event is duplicated. It has to use a different one instead. So is the lifespan event. Okay, okay. So I'm just going to copy this and then feed it back to the AI. So add main.py and then we can drop the blend. Okay, drop the repository as well. And then in main.py there's a obsolete function function dot on event is the right, fixing it. Okay, so now it's using the lifespan argument for fast API. All right, I don't see any problem now with this. So it's importing from the services. Okay, so any issue here? I don't see it. Any issue in repo? So basically, this is where it will just gonna create if not exist. Uh, Normally, this DB in the DB is in the like a core database file, but for this project, it's just fine to be here. For now, I'll probably refactor this when I extend this project later. Okay, so with that, how do I run this? It's Ubicon. So to ask how to run this app using Ubicon command. Just going to use the typical one. So we have error. So email validator is not installed. Right, so let's do this. Copy either I got an error. Okay, it's fine. Okay, us nope, not edit identifying file. I'm just going to install it. Actually, we need to edit the requirements txt. All right, so can you add the new install in requirement text? This is being lazy though, but uh, let's if we are vibe coding, we just vibe coding. Okay, right. So it's adding the pedantic email, so it should be there. So run the requirement text again. To add the pedantic email validator. Okay, so let's run the app. Error, no error. Okay, so now the app's running here. We should have a health API endpoint just to check. Okay, so if that's the case, let's just test using Postman. This one /register. Okay, so body is raw JSON. So username, email, password. Let's just send username is Jai, email is Jai at just password is password. All right, so anything else I need? So suppose blah 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 register and is thing is running. Okay, let's send. All right, so we got registered successfully. So let's do another one. This one is for login. So instead of register is login. So it's going to be a post and a body raw. So login, we need identifier. Okay, so I don't know why you use identifier. I can just say ID. Anyway, okay, identifier and password. So identifier is my email, so it's going to be like jai.test.com and this thing is password. All right. Oh, again a comma. All right. So login suppose send. Yep, we got an access token, and this is the access token. All right. So the registration and the login pass. Okay. So let's go back to the code. Now, uh, let's do the code review now. So now, basically, you have seen that the code actually works. We can also do some sort of testing, like end-to-end testing ourselves on these endpoints. For example, if I do, is there any requirement? Oh yeah, it has to be unique. So let's say I go ahead and register again, right? So with the username Jai, but email of Jai123. Different email, same username, but I did mention that it needs to be a unique. So when we register, let's see if actually see actually have some sort of a validation to see if any of this is is exists. So right, so we are supposed to get an error here if we send again because username Jai is already existed. So see username already exists, right? So we do a Jai O here, but uh, on email that was already been on email already exists. So now it's sent, the email already exists. So technically on those two requirements we send, which is username has to be unique, email has to be unique, it passes. What else that we particularly mentioned? I don't remember anything else. We didn't mention the rules for the username or for the email. So, we might be able to do something that is not correct here, like, sending a invalid email kind of format. It will still accept, I guess, because we didn't mention it. Also on username, we could also send a huge string and we'll still pass because we didn't actually mention what's the rule for the username, like it has to be less than 8 character or 12 character, whatever. So because of that, we can't really test that. And I can see there's another error here. Use time zone aware by representing. Okay, so just going to do this as well. So copy and then drop main and then add what's this file user service and then say there's an obsolete whatever function here. UTC now. Okay. Right, so it's going to change UTC now to a now the time blah blah blah. Okay, that's true. Okay, so that right is yeah, it's fixed. Okay, so let's go through uh some code review. Okay, let's start with main.py. because our prompt is not very specific. There, of course, there are things here that we can actually, make it better. But the question is, does this main.py run and run properly? The answer is yes, right? Because in main.py, you can actually have your endpoints here in main.py. It's not wrong, right? But when you do an app that is expected to scale, then you cannot do this. This has to be inside a proper, like a router folder, or that you can actually scale. So you have like a user router, then you have another domain module router as well, like finance router or car router, a different object, right? But in terms of this particular project, which is small in scale, in size, that this is not wrong, right? Okay, so that's one. And then if you look at the way that this thing actually uh, structure the code, you can tell that it's modular because it actually use a method that has been imported from a proper service class. You can note it, you can note this user register user actually comes from an imported class, right? So that's good. And then it returns an object. You can actually have a more uh, structured return object to make it standardized, like using a JSON response or proper API response class. But like I said, I can actually specify this in my system prompt, but I did not. So it still did a fairly good job here by actually standardizing the return. See, the return of this actually has a good structure to it, or even though you can actually make it better, right? And it used a try and accept, so it's gracefully handling if there's an error, and on error it actually raised an exception, and the exception is also very specific, very specific to a certain like status code, and the details are actually mentioned as well when there's an error, right? So in terms of this file, and the UVCon is also standard, you know, and the way it's initialized the fast API, whatever it is to initialize is correct. This is DTOs, Palantic models. So in more enterprise settings, this has normally it needs to be inside a DTO folder, uh, and a specific DTO domain model class, or not class file. Like for example, like there should be an API slash DTO slash user slash this file. Should be like that. So to make it scalable. But like I said, I didn't mention it, and that here has to be done that way. But I could, right? But in terms of this implementation for this particular project, for this particular main.py file, this is not wrong. Okay, right. So again, this is also typically we call it a key value pair that you put inside an environment file .env. But I didn't also mention that you have to use an environment file. So that's why, again, this is not wrong. And actually, if you just look at this specific block, this is exactly how you do it inside the .env file. So then again, this is also not wrong, right? And if you look at the imports are all, correct. Right, so look at the user service. Again, this is how you do a service class. Right, so actually there is no big class definition. So that's not in it. But then again, I didn't also mention it. So normally, again, this is not exactly how I would do things when it comes to enterprise uh, development. I would ask, for the user service to be inside a class, and the methods to be inside the uh, sorry, yeah, the method will be inside the class, so that we can actually properly, initialize, the parameters, and we can also use the injection a bit more proper, yeah. But looking at this, still, I don't see anything wrong with it. Using the JWT method uh, properly also. But again, look at this, because we are not using an env file. This is actually repeated, which is technically we can do better, right? But we didn't mention to use the env file, so technically that's basically something that we can improve. Okay, but I'm not saying this is wrong. This is not. Okay, so creating the password is in bcrypt. Okay, again, if this is submitted to me as a code reviewer, knowing that I did not properly say, what are the rules, all these codes that being generated is technically not wrong. I can accept this. Again, I could have told, whoever they created this, that, any database handling should be inside core database file where you actually in it during in the main AP main.py lifespan initialization, but it did do it here, but just that the class is actually not in the core file. But like I said, technically it's not wrong, right? It's just an organization of where you put things. All right, and again, normally the repo should be inside its own class. So we have a user repo class, and all these like methods should be inside the repo class. But I didn't mention that. So technically, this is also there's nothing wrong with this code. Using cursor.execute. Uh, yep, yep. I mean, like I said, I mean, I just don't see anything wrong with this code. I mean, uh, from a junior to mid-level developer, these codes are there's nothing wrong with this code. I mean, of course, you're not if you believe in better scalability, you should not be using raw SQL. You should be using like or an ORM, for example. But like I said, this is not the scope of this project. So in terms of what has been told to the AI, there's really nothing wrong with this code, right? So uh, what else that we should look into when it comes to reviewing codes? So readability, yep, it's very readable. Maintainability, it could do better if I prompt it better, or set up a better rules in terms of how you structure the things inside the project. But as per the prompt that I have given to the AI, that that code base is there's nothing wrong with it. It's still a maintainable code. Even if I want to move things around, it's still in a I know where it is and I know how to move it around. So it's a maintainable code, right? So correctness, yes, we have to test it. It works. It has clear documentation, correct? Uh, it could it could do better if I don't think I prompt documentation too much. I could ask for more documentation. I don't remember. I think I did, but no, I think I did not. So in terms of best practice here, there should be a documentation somewhere in here. But instead, actually I did. You know what? In terms of that, this is basically just endpoints. But again, I don't see much documentation here. So yeah, we can actually test better on how documentation to be better written, uh, because that's probably the prompt that has problem or and have issues. Um, right. So in terms of efficiency, yep, I don't see any issue where the database will open and close properly, and the in terms of using the database is actually when and do a proper one. If you want to just fetch one, and the sequence of how the execution of the data is retrieval is also correct. Just using the cursor and the cursor execute and fetch one. And in terms of managing the session itself, I'm not very familiar with this with SQLite, so it should close on its own. Or there should be something to actually a better best practice for this in terms of managing the closing of any connection. But I'm gonna have to look into that. But I just don't see anything really wrong with it. Again, if you guys see anything really big that I didn't know, you can just put it down in the comments. And again, error handling, graceful error handling, is there, and proper logging is also there, except for the logging for like data. We actually did not put that in the scope, but we also not uh, debugging it uh, closely line by line, so we didn't actually use any like console logging in this process. But I'm sure all those things are we can actually just talk to the AI and request for it. So with that, uh, I would say in in very high confidence way that uh, vibe coding is legit. And if you are not thinking that you always want to produce like always high level performant godlike codes all the time, I would say you could vibe code your way in your work, and there's no problem with it. The only condition is that you need to do it the correct way, right? So that's my opinion. But I hope I make my case. So again, if you guys think differently, just put it down in the comment, and hopefully we can have a discussion. All right. So with that, um, hope to see you guys in the next video. Right. See you guys. Peace.